The insiders are back. A couple things to talk about this week politically, even though it's kind of the off season. We're in between elections, and yet there was kind of a bombshell related to a former member of the administration tied to Governor Eric Holcomb. Abdul-Hakim Shabazz, instrumental in that a little bit. He's going to talk about that along with Democratic insider Brian Gaddie. Let's start with that. His name is Peter Lacey. A lot of people, the casual person may not know the name Peter Lacey, but he did run the BMV for a bit. Then all of a sudden he resigned. And then Abdul, in your IndyPolitics.org newsletter, you broke the news this week that he was headed to Virginia for a similar job. And then all of that fell apart with an Indianapolis Star story about a lot of goings on, alleging a lot of goings on, and that the governor allowed his resignation, even though he was facing a lot of claims of sexual comments, inappropriate behavior while he was the head of the BMV.
Yes, in a nutshell. I found out earlier this week that Peter Lacey had been applying for an accepted job with Governor Youngkin in Virginia to run their Department of Motor Vehicles, basically the Virginia equivalent of the BMV. He was going to be paid $185,000 a year, going to do some upgrading on the star came out by our colleague Tony Cook, basically saying that Peter Lacey had been engaged in untoward behavior, whether sexual comments, possible. It seemed like his speech was slurred from time to time. I can tell you from what I've been able to find out that he, on the speech slurring stuff, he was not intoxicated. There were some other things going on here, but that I know he was not intoxicated. And also, people give the governor a hard time saying the governor, well, you should talk about this. Well, the governor can't because it's personnel matters. And so just like if any of us were to lose our job, I would say it's like, yeah, he worked here from this day to this day, and that was it. So in a nutshell, that's what we have right now.
Democrats, and I'll let Brian answer this in just a second, but Abdul, Democrats have made the allegation that the governor didn't say anything not to protect Peter Lacey's privacy or for personnel reasons, but that the Lacey family has been a heavy contributor to Republican politics and to the governor in past campaigns. And that was the reason. Again, the allegation from Democrats that the governor didn't say anything.
Well, the Lacey Foundation was also donating lots of money to Hoosier causes. So keep that in mind. Yes, they give to political candidates, but they also give to charities across the state of Indiana as well. And I really do think, though, whether that was true or not, the governor is still covered by the personnel code, which says you don't talk about personal private matters publicly.
Brian Gaddie, Democrats are trying to make an issue of this. Is it an issue? And will the average person care? Or is this above the average Hoosier's head, do you think?
I don't think it's definitely above the average Hoosier's head. I mean, the fact is the Republican Party, whether it's this situation or just even not just here in Indiana, but across the country, the Republican Party has a problem when it comes to how their politicians behave toward women. And this is an issue the Republican Party needs to do something about. And this is definitely not an issue that I think we as Democrats should definitely not pursue. We should definitely pursue this issue. So no, I don't think it's above the average Hoosier's head.
But how do you make people care?
I think women care. I think the average person cares. I think we really need to just talk about this issue and just say, hey, we've got to have people in government that know how to conduct themselves with class, dignity, decency, respect, and to treat everybody the way they want to be treated. I don't think that's too much to ask. We've got people serving in government think that it's the privilege of us that they're serving in government. They're called public servants. They serve the public. And part of that is conducting themselves with class and dignity and respect. And that also includes treating women with the respect that they deserve. So if you cannot do that, you shouldn't be in government.
Speaking of issues that are connected to women, or at least as we think of them politically connected to women, there's going to be more demonstrations here in Indiana and across the country as it regards to abortion rights coming this weekend. They are scheduled anyway. And at the same time, we have another big issue, or what's expected to be a big issue in the elections this year. Gas prices hit a record high this week, and inflation, even though it's slowed, prices are still increasing as of the latest data from the federal government. Brian Gaddie, Democrats want to take advantage of this draft opinion from the Supreme Court that potentially shows Roe v. Wade is on life support. But how do you do that at the same time prices are going up, which could be a vulnerability for Democrats, not just here in Indiana, but as you try to hold on to the House and the Senate in Washington?
Well, as I've said before, Ray, we can walk and chew gum at the same time. We don't have to just have an issue, just one focus campaign. Of course, we have to talk about the issues that affect women, and that includes the right to choose. Roe v. Wade, settled law, as far as I know. It's been there since 1973. It's a precedent. I thought the justices on the Supreme Court adopted the issue of or legal principle of stare decisis. I know our good friend Abdul knows that better than me, being a lawyer, but that's respecting precedent. And this is settled law. Then there was also Casey v. Planned Parenthood. So women really have a right to be upset. They have a right to be angry, and they have a right to be concerned. And not just women, but men like myself who are strong allies of women's rights and women's right to choose. So this is an issue we must talk about as Democrats, but at the same time, we also must talk about those kitchen table issues that affect Hoosiers. And that includes obviously high gas prices, inflation. These are issues we have to deal with. And of course, we got to go out there and present it in such a way that voters find us believable and credible. And hopefully they'll give us a chance to work on these issues in the majority in Congress.
Abdul saw an article from Megan McArdle. It was an opinion piece in the Washington Post this week. And I know you've made the argument that should the Supreme Court say Roe is out and some states, whether it's Indiana, whether it's other states, do away with abortion rights, that could come back to bite Republicans later. However, there's not a lot of hard evidence that that's actually the case, that it may not have the ripple effect that some people, that Democrats are hoping it would have.
Well, see, I think it will have a ripple effect, but it'll be a limited ripple effect, particularly in those suburban congressional, maybe sort of state house districts. For example, here in Indiana, you have Congressman Victoria Sparks, who could possibly have some vulnerabilities. You've got Kyle Walker, who represents the Lawrence area state senator, and also Alex Choi, who's a Republican running against JD Ford. So those suburban districts where women are conservative, but they're still fundamentally pro-choice, that's where I think Republicans could have some issues there. And as far as stare decisis goes, I respect Press as much as the next guy, but I remind my good friend, Mr. Gaddie, that Dred Scott and Plessy v. Ferguson used to be precedent too. So there is a history in our country of overturning what we believe is precedent. Now, do I think Roe v. Wade is going to be overturned to the extent to be put back to the states, at least right now? Yes, but we also have to keep in mind too that this was still just a draft opinion. Number two, we don't know whether it was a first draft, a second draft, a third draft, or a final draft. So we need to keep that in mind as well. However, but I do think the debate has recentered on abortions in this country. It's going to be interesting to see what happens when the court makes that decision come June.
Abdul, very quickly, if we're even able to tell yet, the bigger issue right now, not for the extremes of both parties, but for everybody in the middle, abortion politics or gas prices, inflation?
I would say gas price inflation, because when I had to fill up yesterday, it was $4.59 a gallon. I was like, okay, all right, this is not ridiculous. So at least I know what my price point is. It's $4.59 per gallon. Abortion is an important issue, but I think gas price and inflation is going to be a much more important issue down the road.
Brian, what do you think? Abortion politics, Democrats hope to ride that to hold on to the House, hold on to the Senate, maybe codify Roe next year. Can that be a bigger issue, or will that be a bigger issue, though, than, as Abdul said, how much it's costing to fill up our gas tank?
I don't know if it'll be a bigger issue, but I think it'll be an important issue, and I think it'll fire up our base. We obviously need women voters, young voters, to get out to vote for us Democrats in order for us to hold the House and make gains in the Senate. So I don't think it'll be necessarily a bigger issue than gas prices and inflation, but it will be an equally important issue. And we need to show that we're going to fight for women's rights. We're going to fight for a woman's right to choose, while at the same time working as hard as we can to mitigate the deleterious effects of inflation and high gas prices. We got to show we can do both. We got to show we can do both.
Well, extenuating circumstances have caused us to run out of gas on this abbreviated edition of Insiders. Abdul-Hakim Shabazz, Brian Gaddie, thank you so much.
And thanks, Ray.
Thank you, Ray.